Fog. Throughout FromSoftware games, fog has always marked the moment something changes. Normally it is displayed as a boundary or a point of no return. You see it and you know, whatever is on the other side, you're not coming back until you claim victory or die. But in Elden Ring, something is different about that fog. For the first time, it's gold. And in a game where everything is intentional, some very uncomfortable questions start to appear. Why are the boss gates gold at all? Why is the Tarnished's entire journey framed by crossing fog? And why does every kind of fog seem to mean something different? Before you even set foot in the lands between, Elden Ring gives you a fog gate. The opening narration tells you directly, "Ye dead who yet live, are tarnished of no renown. Cross the fog to the lands between, to stand before the Elden Ring." The sea is described as a misty boundary separating the lands between from the rest of the world. A boundary made of fog that the Tarnished must cross to even begin their journey. And the game never explains why it's fog specifically, it just is. You cross it, you arrive, and you move on. But this first encounter quietly defines how the entire world is structured. To understand why, you have to go back further, not to Elden Ring itself, but to FromSoftware's relationship with fog as a concept. In Demon's Souls, the first FromSoftware game to establish the fog gate as a mechanic, it had a direct lore explanation. The kingdom of Boletaria had been consumed by a colourless fog, drawn there by a demon king awakened from slumber. The fog walls throughout the game were a literal manifestation of the demonic corruption spreading throughout the world. There were barriers between the safe and the dangerous, between the known and the terrifying unknown. You passed through them and you were in a different kind of space, a space that wanted you dead. Dark Souls carried this tradition on, making the grey fog gates atmospheric dividers. It communicated one thing clearly: do not come back until it is finished. The lore didn't deeply explain them because they didn't need any explanation. They were the grammar of the game, the punctuation between one chapter and the next. Every FromSoftware game before Elden Ring treated the fog gate as a functional mechanic dressed in atmosphere, and then Elden Ring changed the colour. In Elden Ring, colour is never decorative. They all have meaning. Scarlet is corruption. It represents the influence of the outer god of rot. Wherever scarlet appears, the natural order has been overridden by something invasive, spreading, and uncontrollable. Blue is cold, distant, and ancient. The blue of sorcery, of Ranni's questline, of the stars she turned towards. It represents forces outside the Erdtree entirely. Not corruption, and not decay, but separation. Indifferent to it in the same way the night sky is indifferent to the land below. And then there's gold. Grace, the Erdtree's blessing made visible. The divine authority of the Golden Order, the force that defines structure, order, and meaning within the lands between. Gold represents the world as it is governed, not outside it, not opposing it, but enforcing it. A system that presents itself as eternal, which makes it very uncomfortable that the fog gates are gold, because it means grace itself is forming a wall. Grace has always been your guide since the moment you arrived in the lands between. You, the Tarnished, are drawn back by it, a fragment of divine light from the Erdtree, pointing you forward through a broken world. It marks direction, highlights paths, and pushes you towards key encounters. Which makes the golden fog gates feel strangely contradictory. The very force guiding you through the world is also the thing sealing you inside its most important moments. However, from a more theoretical perspective, it makes perfect sense. Because when you look at the state of the lands between, the role grace gives the Tarnished becomes very clear. The Elden Ring is shattered, demigods cling to their great runes, the world has stalled in a state of decay and deadlock, so the greater will needs the Tarnished for only one reason: to fix it. But here lies the problem. The Tarnished have been called before, many of them, and they all failed. Most notably, one of these failures is Vike, who was the greatest champion the Round Table Hold had ever produced. A warrior so formidable that the ancient dragon Lansax shared her most powerful incantations with him. Fingerita Enia mentions that only once before had she seen two great runes together, a likely reference to Vike, since he was the only one who ever came close to becoming Elden Lord before you arrive. He had done everything Grace asked of him. He had gathered the runes, walked the path, stood at the threshold of becoming Elden Lord, and then he walked away from it. It seems that Vike was unable to bring himself to sacrifice his maiden in order to burn the Erdtree, and was ultimately consumed by the corrupting allure of the Three Fingers and the frenzied flame. Whether it was grief, manipulation, or a deliberate choice made for someone he loved, Vike deviated from the path Grace had laid out for him. He chose something personal over the system's purpose, and the system had no forgiveness for that. He was imprisoned in a evergaol in the mountaintops of the Giants. The Tarnished who came closest to restoring grace ended up imprisoned by it, sealed inside fog. And this is what makes the Golden Fog Gate so unsettling. Grace is not guiding you because it cares about you. It is guiding you because it needs you to complete what others before you refused or failed to finish. Every Golden Fog Gate that seals behind you is a message, a quiet reminder that you were called here for a purpose. The Greater Will has watched Tarnished after Tarnished deviate from that purpose, walk away, get distracted, choose something human over something divine, and every time that happened, the world stayed broken. In this essence, the Fog Gate closes behind you because Grace has decided that this time you are not going to walk away. But Elden Ring also makes something else very clear. Divine powers rarely control the lands between directly. Even the Greater Will acts through envoys, vessels, and fragments of influence rather than absolute authority. Grace can guide you, it can point the way, but it cannot fully choose for you. And maybe that's what the Golden Fog Gate actually is. Not Grace controlling your actions, but Grace removing retreat once you've already chosen to step forward. The moment you cross that threshold, hesitation stops mattering. The fight has begun, and the world will now demand an outcome. However, the proof around this is very limited, so for now this is just my theoretical perspective. But even if that interpretation is wrong, Elden Ring still draws a very deliberate distinction between different kinds of fog, because the White Fog Gates are still in the game, most clearly around sealed rooms and stone sword key barriers, usually separating optional encounters from the rest of the area. Unlike the Golden Fog Gates tied to bosses, these white barriers feel quieter and more mechanical, less like divine intervention and more like old locks left behind by the world itself. These aren't barriers forcing you forward, they're protecting hidden places, optional dangers, or buried secrets. Even after opening them, you can walk through or turn back. That distinction matters because it means one gate feels like a choice, while the other feels like confinement. And nowhere is that idea pushed further than evergaols, because if the Golden Boss Fog Gates are Grace becoming a cage, evergaols are that idea taken to its absolute extreme. In Elden Ring, an evergaol basically means an internal jail, and once entered, similar to Golden Fog Gates, escape is impossible until one of you die. They appear as stone circles pressed into the earth, surrounded by strange worm-like creatures made of rock with glowing eyes. To enter the evergaol, you interact with the symbol at the center, and are transported into a pocket dimension that is a prison built into the fabric of the world itself. The origins of evergaols are one of the few things Elden Ring refuses to explain. Nobody built them in any way that the game acknowledges. They simply exist, fog rising from their boundaries, containing whatever was sealed inside them, long before you arrived. What we do know, however, is what they were used for: containment without execution, a way of removing something from the world without destroying it, sealing it in fog, cutting it off from the lands between, and leaving it to exist in isolation while history continues without it. What makes the evergaol stand out in relation to fog gates is the way the space is defined. There is no sense of architecture, no visible boundary holding it together in a physical sense. It does not look like a typical prison. Instead, it replaces that with fog. And unlike other fog gates in the lands between, there is no sense that this fog leads anywhere else. It doesn't separate one place from another. It creates a contained reality where nothing outside can interfere, and nothing inside can escape. In that way, the evergaol fog doesn't act as a transition between states, but as a state in itself. And when you step inside one, the same fog that imprisons whatever's in the evergaol closes around you too. You cannot summon help, and you cannot leave. The fog becomes something that contains you both. Which means fog in Elden Ring operates on 3 distinct levels. The white fog seals secrets, the golden fog marks divine confrontation, and the evergaol fog removes, each one a different expression of the same idea, that in the lands between, fog is never just mist. It is always power asserting itself over space. So what does it mean that the entire journey of the Tarnished is framed by fog since the very start, defined by fog gates throughout, that ends with a final golden gate that seals them in with Marika and Radagon? In my opinion, the fog represents the condition of the Tarnished. It is what they cross to return, what they pass through to fight, and what seals them into every confrontation. The grace that called them back guides them to fog gate after fog gate. Each one a moment where the thing guiding them becomes the thing containing them. And through this interpretation, grace and fog become 2 expressions of the same system. The lands between isn't a place the Tarnished return to, it's a larger, more elaborate version of the space they were always in. Each fog gate is an echo of their original exile, where the Tarnished was stripped of choice, and now forced to fight their way through or die. In Elden Ring, the fog didn't end when you crossed the sea, it just changed colour.